Hello students, good morning. You can see today the nation, the best Christmas present in the world. This story I started yesterday, and for better understanding, you can divide the story in three parts, as I have done. Michael Morpurgo is one of the best storytellers. His style of storytelling, as I told you, is very unique. And he has started the story in the first part as the narrator. He himself describes his views, his experiences in the backdrop of World War. The main purpose is to criticize war, and his message is that friendliness, matches, sports can reduce the hatred between countries and between people. So there are some dates and periods, very important dates and periods are there as in the introduction. So the World War began in the backdrop of World War I. This story has been set. And in the first part, the narrator says that I bought a roll-top desk. Roll-top desk is nothing unique, just a movable top desk with drawers and etc. The story started. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridgeport. The objective questions must be from this lesson, like which place, which shop, at which place he found the roll-top desk. So he found it in a junk shop in Bridgeport. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. I had wanted one, but they were far too expensive. So in the regular shop, he went and found them very costly. Expensive means costly. This one was in a bad condition, the roll top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scorch marks all down the side. It was going for very little money. So it was a broken one, a scorched marks means burnt marks, somewhere it had the parched marks means sign, clumsily mended, one leg was broken earlier and it was not very properly mended. Clumsily means in a very shaky way, not in a very suitable manner, not suitable, clumsily, ill-mannered setting of the leg, of the table, of the desk. It was going for very little money, means it was coming very cheap to the writer, and the writer thought I could restore it. Restore means mend it. It would be a risk, a challenge, but I had to have it because it was coming cheap, so I decided that I would make further repairs. So I took the risk, I put the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. It was Christmas. Christmas plays an important part to give a message of God to man. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers, started working on it. Repairing job started in his where? In his workroom, in his workshop. It was located behind the garage. Garage is a place where vehicles are kept, you could say, at the back of the garage. He started repairing it. While repairing, I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. The veneer had lifted almost everywhere. Veneer is a covering, you can say this is over Sanmaika or like this vinyl veneer covering, hide, upper thin hide covering. It looked like water damage to me. So it was water damaged, it was fire damaged, the roll top desk. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. They had clearly taken their toll, means they had damaged it as much as they could. It was in a bad shape. The last drawer was stuck fast. The narrator had problem especially with the last drawer, but he said, I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force, means with gentle force when it was not giving way, the drawer was not opening. I used brute force, means excessive force, which was animal force, just in anger or just he hit it with a fist hard. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath. The drawer was a shallow one. Shallow one means it was not very deep, depth was not very much. It was shallow. It was a small drawer. Shallow tape to the top of it was a piece of lined note paper and written on it in Seki handwriting. There was something there. In that secret drawer, there was something I found. What was that? A small black tin box, cello-taped, means sealed, not meant to be opened easily, by chance, casually. So if one wanted to get the content of that box, one had intentionally to tear the cellotape. So it was a private property. Somebody had kept it secretly. In Seki handwriting, what was written? The owner of the box had written on it, Jim's last letter. Received January 25th, 1915. So it was written what the content was inside. Its description was written outside. To be buried with me when the time comes. And the owner of this tin box wanted this to be buried with her. Jim's letters, the writer wanted to, or the note was saying that it was meant to be buried with the owner. When time comes, means when she dies, when it so happens, I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiously got the better of my scruples. It usually judge. Scruples means buddhi, just feeling that scruples means your wisdom. So curiosity got the better of my scruples, wisdom. Wisdom says, or common sense says, not to intrude in someone's privacy, not to open the content of that tin box. But my curiosity, it is my habit, he says, often gets better. So this time also it got better. It scored over my scruples. Inside the box there was an envelope. The address read, Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beeches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top, December 26th, 1914. So during the World War, it was written just on Christmas occasion. You will read, it was a letter from Jim Macpherson. As you see, Jim's letter, and it was addressed to Mrs. Jim Macpherson. Means it was a love letter between husband and wife. Jim Macpherson and Mrs. Jim Macpherson. The letter was written just next day after the Christmas and reached 1 month later approximately on January 25th, 1915. So you can say the correlation, and Mrs. Macpherson's address, or Mr. and Mrs. Macpherson's lived at 12 Copper Beeches. So the address was clear for the narrator. Narrator knew whose letter it was, who had written and for whom it was written. So this is the background. Now, the curious narrator reads the letter, which is the main idea in this story. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. I want to share the happy moment. I am very happy today because yesterday something very interesting happened and I want to share with you. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning. Trenches, you can say, earth dug up to the west so that soldiers can hide after firing, to hide themselves from enemies after firing. Trenches where they stood, soldiers stand in the battleground. So we were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning, Christmas morning. Yesterday it was Christmas, obvious. It was crisp and quiet all about, as beautiful a morning as I have ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. It was an ideal weather. Just the mindset, the narrator is creating an image of something good. The weather is also good. Some auspicious thing is going to happen. Some good thing is going to happen that day. The weather also, the God permit, nature also permitted, wanted some good things to happen. And what good things happen? This is the symbolical representation of the idea that something good is going to happen, and nature is also sharing that goodness. I should all like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth I am ashamed to say means I would have been happy to tell you that we began it. I wish if it could be true, but it is not true, and it is a shame. I am hesitant to say that Fridge began it. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. So Fridge began it, means my opposition began it. I am ashamed, means I am hesitant. That I wanted to, means the narrator, Jim McPherson, the writer of this letter, says that it would have been a proud moment for me if I had begun it. But it was the opposite party, the Fridge party. So it is very remarkable, noteworthy for the students to keep in mind that Fridge stands for the German soldiers and Tommy stands for the British soldiers. I have given you this description. Here, the letter from the battlefield during World War I describes a friendly truce. Truce means peace agreement. Peace agreement, agreement or you can say some kind of confidence that nobody will fight today. Truce, peace, between the Fridge, German soldier, and Tommy, English soldier, and merrymaking together on Christmas. So the whole story the whole letter is describing the Merry Christmas. And who started this? Whose idea was this? The writer of this letter. Who is the writer? Jim McPherson. He wished that he would have begun it, but the thing was just the opposite. The opposite party, Fridge party, began it. He was Tommy. Fridge party came out from across the opposite side, no man's land. Happy Christmas, Tommy, happy Christmas. When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, same to you, Fridge, same to you. I thought that would be that. We all did. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey coat and waving a white flag, don't shoot lads, someone shouted, and no one did. Then there was another Fridge up on the parapet and another, keep your heads down. I told the men it's a trick, but it wasn't. So here, there is always mistrust, misbelief between the soldiers, and Jim says, I thought it was a trick played by the Fridge. We just greeted them in the same way. Merry Christmas. It was a Christmas day we greeted. And I thought that was that. Means the matter ended there. But it wasn't. But the matter didn't end there. All the soldiers, they came out in their uniforms, grey colored great coats. Great coat wearing, or great coat wearing soldiers, uniformed soldiers came out. They all were carrying white flags and they were crying, "Don't shoot, lads." And there was just a very suspicious situation. I want my soldiers to be on alert, to keep heads down, to be ready for fight. But one of the Germans was waving a bottle above his head. "It is Christmas Day, Tommy. We have samples, we have snaps, we have sausage. We meet you, yes." But one of the soldiers was in a great ecstatic mood, enjoyable mood, just having a bottle of wine. Snaps is a wine on his head, and he was crying, "We have meat for you, food and drink for you, we will enjoy, celebrate." This was the scenario. "We meet you, yes, we are coming to meet you." By this time, there were dozens of them walking towards us across no man's land, and not a rifle between them. They were unarmed, so there was no need to just worry. And then my soldiers also became comfortable or confident that they are not coming to fight. From their gestures, it was clear that meant no threat. That meant no threat. There was no need to worry. Not a rifle between them. Little Private Morris was the first up. Private Morris was the first up. "Come on, boys, what are we waiting for?" Then from our side also, Morris was the first who stood up and just called our boys, called our men also. What were we waiting? We must also reciprocate. We must also greet them if they are coming to celebrate Christmas with us. We must also welcome them. And thus we started welcoming them. And there was no stopping them, or nobody could stop them on that occasion. My soldiers and the opposite soldiers, they were all greeting together. It was a marvelous moment there, I suppose. But the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. So such a great idea. I like the enemy's idea also was great. Here Jim is showing a large-hearted Britisher. He is appreciating a good move even from the opposite side. He says, "This should have struck my mind, but it didn't, and it struck my enemy's mind, and I welcome the idea." I appreciate him for having such an idea and working on that idea. Just grey coats, khaki coats meeting in the middle on the no man's land, is a piece of land between the two countries where no country can claim. It is a common area. So in the common area, the khakis and grey coats uniforms met together, and I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. This is the ideal situation. Soldiers are also people. Countries should not decide matters through war. There are other ways. They must devise other ways, like in the story. The solution is there. You can have other ways and means to resolve your disputes, to decide the victory, who wins and who loses in the sports ground or in other areas, not in the war front, because war is very brute. It is a brutal concept, brutal animal concept, uncivilized concept. You can't imagine, dearest Connie, now the familiar matter here comes. Jim is writing to his wife, Connie. "You can't imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the fridge officer who approached me, hand outstretched, Hans Wolf," just introducing himself. The German officer came to me and hugged me, just embraced me, take me into arms, and introduced Hans Wolf. His name was. Outstretched means just protruding, going outside, open-armed, just arms, open, something when you hug somebody, when you embrace somebody, when you meet some near and dear one, you clasp in your arms. You bind someone in your arms, that is called just arm stretched, openly, welcoming. Gripping my hand warmly. Gripping means clasping warmly, firmly, and holding it. I am from Düsseldorf, the place. He is telling him, introducing his name and his birthplace, like that, where he belonged to which place. I am from Düsseldorf, the preposition from. Düsseldorf, it means the place. I play the cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. Before coming to this, before recruitment into the army, I was playing cello is an instrument in the orchestra musical band. Captain Jim Macpherson, I replied. I also reciprocated. The writer of the letter writer, says to his wife, describes his wife in direct narration what I said on the occasion. I also introduced myself as Captain Jim Macpherson. So who the writer of this letter is? Jim Macpherson. His rank is captain in the army, captain of his troop. And happy Christmas to you too. I also greeted. I am a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. England is a very famous, world famous place. And he said that I worked as a teacher, a school teacher in Dorset. That place is in the west of England. I also introduced myself. The opposite party, the Germans, meaning to say they are so lively people. He said, Dorset, he smiled. He had idea about England and English culture, English writing, you will see. At Dorset, he smiled. I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sausage. Sausage means chicken meat, blotted piece of meat, sausage, and rum is a drink. Wine, we shared my rum ration. Ration is quota. So, army personnel are given daily quota, and we shared among us, the German and the English soldiers. They said, the captain shared. I and what was the name of German soldier? To remind you again, he was Hans Wolf, and he is Jim Macpherson. So they are sharing their wine and food. So you can imagine whatever is there in the letter. Connie, how we talked, very conversational use of language here in the letter, informal letter. Connie, how we talked, we splendidly talked in a very nice way. He spoke almost perfect English. He was well versed in English, and so language was not a barrier between us. But it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset, never even been to England. We can know a place, we can know just like Hans Wolf. He had never been to Dorset, never been to England, and although he knew many things about England, about the place, Dorset, and about English language. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy, the famous English novelist. His favorite novel, the book is in the form of a novel. Thomas Hardy is a great novelist. You can read about him and his books, novels. Far from the madding crowd. So out there in no man's land, what is Far from the Madding Crowd? Far from the Madding Crowd is a novel written by Thomas Hardy. So out there in no man's land, we talked of Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant Troy and Dorset. So we had different topics to talk about. These are the topics we talked. And as I looked about me, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere. Huddles means meeting. There's one group of soldiers meeting one another. I found no man's land very actively. People were sharing their food and drink, and they were enjoying. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your Wonder Christmas cake. Connie, he thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. And Jim Macpherson, the writer, is telling his wife that your cake, you sent me the cake. Marzipan is a fruit cake that is served, a special cake that was sent by his wife Connie. and Jim's favorite. He says, we seared that, and hence the German captain also liked that cake. Ever tasted, he had appreciated the cake. I agreed, we agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. So just in the back of mind, it was there that he was from the enemy side, from the opposite side. But here, on this occasion, we behaved like the best friends. We were sharing things. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. Connie, it was the ever memorable Christmas party there in the battleground. The two enemy soldiers are celebrating Christmas. This is the message of Christ, Lord God, to live with love and no war. So this lesson is against war. Then someone, I don't know who, brought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goalposts, and the next thing we knew, it was Tommy against Fridge out in the middle of no man's land. Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered. So our team and Hans Wolf's team, they arranged a match and they were now playing a football match. Goalposts were pitched up and things were arranged. We were clapping our hands and thumping our feet. Thumping means beating the floor with the foot. So we were also encouraging our participants, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingle in the air between us. He saw it too and smiled. Jim McPherson has said after a while, I think this is how we should resolve this war. Resolve means finalize. His idea was also the same about war. This was the solution. This way we should resolve this war. War is to be done away with, and the victory should be decided outside the battlefield, even in the sports ground. This was his idea, he told me, he shared with me, Jim McPherson. And we were one. Our breath intermingled. So we breathed the same air that inhaled and exhaled. There was exchange of breath also. No children are orphaned, no wives become widows. No wives, plural wives, so become widows, plural now. No wives become widows. So this is the pathetic scenario of any war. Children are orphaned, they are the worst victim, women and children. They are the worst victim. Children are orphaned. Orphan is one who is without parents, and wives become widow whose husband dies. No one to look after, rendered homeless, wanderers, poor, women and children. War makes them miserable. War increases misery. I would prefer cricket, I told him. Then we Tommies could be sure of winning probably. Germans are just expert in football, and I suggested that we Tommies will win the match if it is a cricket match. So cricket is a national English game. English game it is also popular in England. It is originated in England, and Germans are expert in playing football. So we talked about, we laughed that in cricket we can beat you. We can be 100% sure of beating you. No country can defeat England in cricket. I can be sure of winning this game. In football, there can be no surety. We laughed, means we had pleasantries, exchanged our jokes, and together we watched the game. Sad to say, Connie Fridge won. Just Germans are expert in football, I told you, and the narrator is telling his wife that Fridge won 2-1. This was the score. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs, so it wasn't quite fair. So Hans Wolf, the victory team captain, German captain Hans, he also cracked the joke that our goal was wider and it wasn't quite fair. Our goal was wider. So our goalpost was wider and the opponent's was narrow. It was difficult to goal, but it was a nice victory. So after that, the time came, and all too soon, how the time passed, happy moments passed so soon that we long to enjoy more and more. We lament that the time has passed so fast. So the time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished, the snaps, the rum, and the sausage had long since run out. Run out means exhausted, finished, consumed. Everything was eaten and drunk up. And we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon, that the fighting would end and we could all go home. This is the condition of every soldier, that he is separated from the family. And Hans Wolf shared with me that he was newly married, having a 6-month-old baby, and I also told him that I had a loving wife, Connie, and my family and their family. We exchanged just family matters, domestic things also. And I wished him that he would go back to his family, reunited with his family. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides. No soldier wants to fight, just Hans Wolf said, "Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment for you." And Hans Wolf also greeted good things for Jim McPherson, wished him good. And he said, "I shall never forget this moment, nor you." He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly. None of us wanted to leave the place to just come into the previous position like enemies, I felt. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of grey-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. Trenches, you all know, we were now going back to our positions after celebrating Christmas. And now Jim says to Connie, that night back in our dugouts, you know, trenches, we heard them singing a carol. What is a carol? Carol is a festival song, Christmas song. Just we also sing bhajans on different occasions. So on Christmas there are special devotional songs, carols. So they were singing a popular carol of their country, and we were also singing our Christmas carols, our songs popular in our land. It was Stille Nacht, it means silent night, and our boys gave them a rousing chorus of White Shepherds Washed. So these are the two types of carols. Our side was singing white, means English side was singing White Shepherds Washed, and the German side was singing in their language Stille Nacht, means silent night. So we exchanged carols for a while, and then we all fell silent. We all went to sleep. We had had our time of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. It is my precious moment and I can't forget it. Dearest Connie, by Christmas next year, I think that war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. War will be over, and you know by the dates, by history, that the war lasted 4 years. But the soldier wanted it to end very sooner, and he hoped to meet his wife. He promised his wife that by next year, war will be a distant memory, means war will be forgotten, war will be all over, done away with. And I knew from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. Both sides want peace. We shall be together again soon, I am sure of it. I shall meet you. This he promised to his dearest wife. And you can see this love letter. And what happens if the soldier doesn't come to his wife back? You can say this is very poignant, this is very sentimental story. And this has happened. The contrary, the third part you see. The narrator finds that the wife also fell victim to fire incident, and in extinguishing or putting out the fire, extinguishing the fire, was poured and the desk, roll-top desk was damaged with fire and water both. They had taken its toll in the beginning of the story. She fell victim to an accident, Connie. The narrator thought to visit Connie and Jim McPherson if possible. Through this letter, he got the address. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridport. The narrator was going to Bridport. The address that he got from the desk. The desk which was not easily yielding, surrendering, that was not easily opening, and he opened it using excessive force. From there he got a purpose. He wanted to meet the lovely couple, the McPhersons, the lovely couple, Jim McPherson, who was the captain, and his wife, Connie McPherson. Is the story clear to you? And the narrator, the commentator, is going to meet them at their place. That is at Bridport. The address is there on page 1, 12 Bridport, like that. Isn't it? 12 Copper Beaches. The address is Mrs. Jim McPherson on page number 10. The address is there. So he is going at the address, just a few miles away. It was a few miles journey in the same town. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beaches was. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burned out cell. The roof gaping, the window boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. McPherson. You can mark here a Mrs. McPherson. A is here unknown person, someone, indefinite noun, indefinite. A Mrs. McPherson, someone called Mrs. McPherson. So, the devastation, the destruction is hinted at here. When the narrator reached at the address, he found house number 12 just in a dilapidated condition, roofs apart, falling apart, gaping. Gaping means apart, torn. The walls were all burned up, means fire accident, fire and water, it was all there. So the life was ruined. It is symbolical of that. The narrator, the storyteller is very expert, and he gives you a full idea, and the ideas are linked up with the theme of the story. It is devastation there. He found the devastations. And this premonitions the devastations that occurred in the life of Connie McPherson. It suggests that her life was also ruined. Not only her house, but her life was shattered. When the narrator inquired about Mrs. McPherson from the neighbors, he got some idea. He knew well, a lovely old lady, the neighbor said, in his old man in his slippers. He knew her well. A lovely old lady, he told me, a bit muddle-headed. Muddle-headed means shaky-headed, not very firm, not in the sane condition, just in the mad-like condition, muddle-headed, just blubbering or something all the time, not in a very fit mental condition, unfit mental condition. Is that clear? Mad-like condition. But at her age, she was entitled to be. Entitled to be means it's a desert. At her age, she waited for her husband. Her age, I told you, it is here. Connie, 101 years old Connie. The narrator met 101-year-old Connie McPherson. So her age gets the excuse for her mental condition. At this age, anyone's mental condition would be shaky, not normal, not fit. She had been in the house where it caught fire, and luckily she was saved. No one really knew how the fire has started, but it could well have been candles. Due to candles, the fire must have got. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. So this was her personal habit, personal preference through candles. The fire must have been started. The fireman had got her out. She was saved, luckily, just in time. She was in a nursing home now. He told me Burlington House, the place where the nursing house was, on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. And it was a few miles distance to the other part of the city, town, and the narrator went there. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. The narrator was familiar with the town. It was not difficult. Easily enough means having no difficulty at all in finding the nursing home. There were paper chains up in the hallway and lighted Christmas tree stood everywhere. There was a Christmassy occasion, celebrations, Christmas day that was. And so happy moments. It means something happy is going to happen now to Crony. Crony, who had lost her sanity, lost her mind, had become mad. She had only one idea, that her husband would come back. Husband had promised her to be with her on next Christmas. So she waited for her husband a long time, you can say, exceptionally long time. Christmas tree stood in the corner of the nursing home with a lopsided angel on top. On that Christmas tree, an angel, messenger of God, bringing good news and bringing good luck. That was on the lopsided, means tilted. The tilted branch of the Christmas tree, an angel was made. This is the description of the scenario, how the Christmas decoration was there. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. In the dining room, everyone was singing, wearing paper hat. Everyone was in the festive mood. The matron means the caretaker of that nursing home, who was in charge of the patients there, inmates of that room. Matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. There is no distinction of just no duty and no other things. Christmas makes them all equal. The matron had a hat too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. Mince pie, I told you a fruit cake. This is also a pie, means cake here. Mince pie means non-veg cake. Mince pie means mutton, chicken, or etc. Non-veg items are minced. A mince pie is a type of cake you can generally understand. She walked me along the corridor. She led me along the corridor to Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others. Mrs. Macpherson lives alone. She is not accompanied by anybody. She told me she is rather confused today, and today her madness is at the height. She is restless today, feeling much restless. Today Christmas has made her more restless. There's no one is there with her. Nobody can be kept with her. So she is alone, she has been left alone, confined alone. Just in this condition, the narrator met Crony Macpherson. She has no family, no one visits. I am sure she will be only too pleased to see you. And she took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. Wicker chairs, you can say, wigs, made of wigs, or like that, cane chairs. Hello, sorry. Wicker chairs and conservatory ICU or like that in a very safe conditions, and that had plants plotted, pots were there, plant pots all around. The matron led me to Mrs. Macpherson's place in the nursing home and left the place. And the narrator was there with Crony Macpherson. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. Wispy bun you can see in the picture. This is the rounded and curled up hair. The silver hair means white hair. extremely white hairs. She had curled up in a wispy bun, the hairstyle. She was gazing out at the garden. She was looking fixedly at the garden, waiting as if for someone. "Hello," I said. When I greeted her, "Hello," she turned and looked up at me vacantly. Vacantly means feelinglessly. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. And when I greeted her, "Happy Christmas," and I just called her by the original name, I went on, I continued, I found this means the letter. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. "I found this, I think it's yours." And I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. Connie was looking fixedly, never her glance left my face. She was looking my face fixedly, constantly. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. "What is it?" "It means the letter which belonged to her." That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became suffused means beamed overspread, pure cherry, just on the whole face, the happiness spread, suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. Glow means brightness. The face brightened with happiness. And when I gave the letter and I explained about the desk, about how I found it from the roll-top desk, the story began. But I don't think she was listening. Mrs. Connie Macpherson was lost in her chain of thoughts, looking fixedly at me. She said nothing but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. She had the recognition of the letter. She stroked means thanked the letter or patted the letter. Tenderly means softly, gently, with love. And she said, fingertips, the topmost part of the fingers, fingertips. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest," she said. Here, Mrs. Connie Macpherson's confusion, or you can say she mistook the narrator for her husband. And she remembers the promise that was made in the letter. "You told me," you means Mrs. Connie Macpherson is telling the narrator like her husband. "You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest," she said, "and here you are. You have kept your promise. The best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down. Come closer." I sat down beside her just to please her, just to make her feel happy on the Christmas occasion. Not a soul, not a, you can say, creature on this earth should be unhappy on Christmas occasion. Thinking this in my mind, I followed her instructions. I decided to make her happy. I sat beside her and she kissed my cheek like husband and wife. "I read your letter so often, Jim. Every day I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me, and now you are. You are back. You can read it to me yourself. Every day, I imagined every moment with you. I read the letter every day. I am just dying to hear your voice. Now you are with me. You will read out the letter in your voice to me. Your voice I want to hear. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? Would you read the letter to me? I just want to hear your voice again." And the narrator, you can expect, the readers can expect, followed. Never tried to clarify the doubt. Just he thought this suspicion is good for her health. And she never tried to clarify things, explain things. I've made you a nice Christmas cake, and then perhaps we'll have some tea. I've loved that so much. And the lady promised tea and Christmas cake, marzipan, again the fruit cake that the couple loved all around. "I know how much you love marzipan on this occasion." Marzipan is a fruit cake. So this is the end of this story, dear students. If you have some problem about the word meaning or the question answers, you can consult the study materials, or you can contact me on the number that I gave you yesterday. Thank you very much. Just